Hi everyone, my name is Melanie and this is Chris. We're at the Gold Coast Law Society conference.
Yes, we're a bit on site.
We are on site.
This is a special particular podcast. We've both been listening very carefully to a number of presentations today. A lot of interesting lawyers. There was some. It was in fact a PLT student even gave a presentation, which he spoke for about an hour, which is very commendable because I can tell you that I wouldn't be able to do that.
It's horrifying.
And so fair to him, he's room full of very senior lawyers and everything, and he is able to speak for them. So congratulations to that gentleman. But
that's brilliant.
I know that our president, the Queensland Law Society president, spoke a little bit this morning, and she had some pretty interesting things to say. She did.
So we're at this conference and we're sitting here watching a lot of different things, and in the very, very beginning we had the president of the Law Society, and she said these really interesting these rather interesting statistics.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, so she was more about public trust in lawyers, and apparently when people don't know their lawyer or don't know lawyers and haven't used a lawyer, the public trust is -2 to 11, and this is out of a score of 80.
Yeah, of 80. So basically, less people trust us than trust us.
That's right. So there's a negative number there.
Yeah. I think that's how it works.
That's crazy.
But, we're not statisticians.
It went from I'd said this wrong. It went from -2 to during COVID time to 11.
Yeah.
So during COVID, apparently people trust us more.
Yeah, but we saw there's another stat there.
I'm just going to shut that door so it's a little bit. Sorry guys, just a sec.
You'll have to forgive us. This is a run in progress type of one. It's a bit different for us. We are on site. We're actually out in front of the kind of meeting room, so you might see some people
walking around.
You might see us kind of darting our eyes a little bit.
We're literally live. You can probably hear a lot of background noise, so hopefully you can hear us nice and clearly.
I'm sure our editing people are going to love this. They're going to go, how are we going to scrub out the background noise?
It's going to be hard. But yeah, so -2 to 11, which is not great. But then apparently
that's a big improvement.
A big improvement? I'm not sure certainly it's improvement. Well, it's more than negatives numbers. So those of you out there who watch this because you don't know what lawyers do, it's apparently a lot of you actually don't trust us. Yeah, it's about trust.
It's absolutely about trust.
And we talked about this, about our duties and,
Well, but we can see from, I think there's another stat there that says it went from, of the people that didn't know us, is that?
No, it's when you use a lawyer when you have a lawyer, the trust goes from negative, it used to be -2 and it was 36. So that's a huge jump.
Massive.
And now it's 50. So where it's 11 now, it's now 50. Where it used to be -2, it used to be 36. And these are points. I don't know how they get these points.
These are all stats. But the point of it is firstly, COVID made people trust lawyers.
COVID made a difference.
When people actually use us and actually speak to a lawyer.
That's right.
Their trust goes up.
That's right.
Which is actually nice because there's every chance it could go down.
This actually reminds me of this research I did years ago on sentencing. So the average, you ask an individual out in the street, for instance, let's take that guy, that drunk driver who horribly mowed down all those kids and somebody lost all members of his family in one go. Yeah, horrific.
People were calling for blood.
That's right, horrific. And it was like, nah, put him away forever, that's blah, 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 blah. And so when you ask the individual what the sentence should be for that person, and I don't know if he's been sentenced yet, so I'm going to set aside the law around that. People would go, nah, life imprisonment, it's too good, let's hang him, or life for a life, all this sort of stuff. And if you ask people, they were certainly, like you said, out for blood. But when sentencing is all about the peripherals as well, you talk about what's going on in that person's life, how they've had their life bring up, and whether you think that's right or wrong, that's how sentencing is. And my research on this came out something really interesting, that when you spoke to an individual and said, what do you reckon? They'll go, life imprisonment. But you sit down and teach them the facts, their view softens considerably to, Yeah, I can see the judge made, a reasonable decision in that.
Yeah, it was fair in the circumstances.
So I wonder if it's the same about lawyers. People actually don't know what we do or how we do it.
Probably true.
And why we do it.
Because if they're only ever seeing the things that they perceive from, I suppose, both the media, television, things like that, unfortunately, the actions of the very small minority, the less, let's say, moral and ethical lawyers that they see either on TV or even overseas, unfortunately, we also...
Or TV. I mean, Suits didn't give us a really good example, did it?
No. So they see that and they just assume that's true. Yeah. They assume that that's an accurate representation of who we are as a profession.
So, what I'm interested in is, people out there who are watching this podcast, and they're not necessarily lawyers. I'm assuming that there are people who are not lawyers watching this podcast. I'm just wondering, as you're watching this podcast and as you're meeting us, because we are both lawyers, and I've been a lawyer for a fairly long time, and you've been a lawyer for a reasonable time. Has your attitude towards lawyers changed since you've been watching us, learning more about who we are? I'm just wondering.
I mean, obviously write into us, because it'd be really interesting to kind of know, but I actually sort of suspect that that's the same with everything. Is people just have an inherent kind of distrust for...
Does it flip around though? Because apparently firefighters have got an 80 trust rating. If you meet one, do you trust them less?
Probably, actually. Probably. Because look, I can't imagine they're all...
Any of you firefighters out there, let us know whether you are trusted less than you...
Well, when your house is burning down, I mean, can you... What else can they possibly do? Besides put the fire out?
Yeah. It's their job, right? I'm interested. Like... Because what are the professions that trust less more than less or more? So what are we talking about? We're talking about car salesmen, real estate agents, lawyers. Who else is on the list?
Oh, they're the bottom of the barrel. Unfortunately, I think we're on the bottom tier.
There's not many that... Yeah, sorry, we were a little bit distracted. Sorry about that. There's a little bit of noise going around.
But
yeah, I just don't know. And I'm also interested if you meet a highly trusted, like you meet your doctor.
Yeah, the poor gentleman, he saw us and looked us the other way.
I think we shamed him into leaving. Sorry, whoever that was. Yeah, like they say doctors got a high rating too. Do you meet your doctor and trust them less? I walked out of doctor's surgery thinking I don't like this person.
It's true. I mean, they probably have the opposite effect. I wonder, is if we have a situation where people don't really trust us from the outset, but they get to know us and they trust us a bit more, I suspect that they've got the opposite.
Yeah.
That they start on a really high keel, and when their billing is a little bit suspect, or that someone charges them a little bit more than you'd expect.
Oh yeah, okay.
Suddenly the trust is gone, or a little bit diminished. But I mean, it'd be really interesting if people write in and say that this type of interaction that we're having here really helps.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
I'd be interested then to know whether more lawyers should be doing more things like what we're doing.
Lawyers in general, it's terrible.
Should get to know us. We're all human beings. We all have lives outside of being lawyers.
Yeah. To be fair though, we are a type of person most of the time. Are we more serious or less serious than the average person? I mean, are we? If we put ourselves up against, for instance, I have a dog, as everyone knows, and I've got dog walkers. What about the average dog walker? You put me against them, and we sit there and we chat. I don't know.
But
are we the same? Maybe.
I think we are. I legitimately think. Look, lawyers are not a different breed, but there's a certain type of person that is a lawyer. But outside of their lawyers, I mean, I've always maintained lawyers would be great actors because we're able to put on multiple masks.
That's it. The alliance you have with your client might not be the same. What you're advocating for this client is not the same as the advocation for the next client.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I guess in many ways, we've talked about acting in the best interest of our clients in previous podcasts, and we've talked about what that might look like, but we haven't talked about how that differs during the day for each client to each client to each client.
That's exactly right.
Because we have employers and employee clients, and we have quite a different environment for our employer. You know, the way we interact with our employer clients is quite different to our employee clients.
I mean, that's exactly right. And I suppose as lawyers, and we speak quite casually between each other, similar to what we're sort of doing right now. We get a kind of interesting ability where I know I've certainly seen you advocate in mediations and in court as well, and you've done the same for me. It's actually very interesting because you see it's a completely different person. In fact, I often am self-conscious of the fact that when I am putting the lawyer mask on, and either in a mediation or in court, my voice is completely different.
Right,
At least
slow
in
it
my
down.
mind,
You don't
the way I
contract.
speak is completely different.
It is very true.
And I mean, I think it's just really interesting.
But is that what erodes the trust? Because we are different in different environments? Maybe that's the problem.
One day we're against you, one day we're for you.
Yeah.
And no one really knows our opinion on anything.
We're not trusting because we're not forming an opinion of our own. Maybe
because we know it's not our
job.
job.
If anybody out there has a view on trust in lawyers and where that might come from and how that works, it's very difficult for you and I, isn't it? Because we're in the inside. So looking from the outside, what is it like for people who don't know lawyers?
What do people think about it?
Yeah, certainly please be nice, but write in and let us know whether you thought one thing about lawyers at one point and then you got your own, and then did your view change like these figures, or was it always? I don't know. So what have you found? Because you've been here all day. What have you been talking to? What have you been up to?
I think one of the interesting things about today has been just actually how much I miss this.
Yes.
I mean, before and certainly there'll be some lawyers watching today who will absolutely attest to this. I remember coming to these conferences pre-global event. Again, not using
the word,
the name that you aren't supposed to say.
Yeah.
Pre that time, pre-March last year, and it was a drag. It was genuinely a drag. You used to dread because you actually don't want to just be doing this sort of stuff. You don't want to be listening to speeches and presentations and things like that. And it just, you took it for granted. You really did. And I'm certainly really happy to be here. And they've, it should be said, they have done a very good job here. And I think some thanks should probably go to the committee. They have done an excellent job here.
So, for those who don't know, we're at the Gold Coast Casino.
Yes,
is it called?
The
Star Casino. Yes, the Star.
Yes, so it's even on there.
It's on the piece of paper I'm using here. The Star Gold Coast in Broadbeach in Queensland. So, it's quite a cool place to be, I think. It's one of these places that is a destination. And they have done a brilliant job with setting it up. I mean, the food hasn't been too heavy, it hasn't been too sugary, or it's not too hard to eat. Like sometimes when you go to these places, oh my god, you eat something,
I for one decided the risky tactic of going to an all-day networking event wearing white, but
you managed to survive the day.
What I can see, it's still early.
There's still the evening drinks.
There's still the evening drinks, and as I've recently found out, my friends do listen to this podcast, and
g'day, Chris's friends.
Yes, so they will know my difficulties with trying to keep a white shirt. They've seen me eat a Luxor before.
I think when because we had to drive here around 6 o'clock this morning, and we gave you a coffee, didn't we? And you were drinking in the car.
Those who drink out of keep cups would understand this particular battle, which is trying to kind of sip like this.
Drink without spilling.
Yeah.
So, it was like a bit of a dangerous car expedition.
Just as well, there's not too many potholes between Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
It's true.
We might have done that.
But I think you're right. I've had a brilliant day too, and I've had a brilliant day, I think, because I've been out, been meeting other people. I just, yes, my husband and I go to dinner every now and again, but I haven't gone to the cinema since March last year. We just don't do this, and we actually understand that we're in a world where COVID is still a thing. We're in a world where the event is still happening, and I'm certainly mindful of that. And here in the Gold Coast especially, or in Brisbane, we are very lucky to be able to have these events without wearing face masks, without actually truly worrying that there is the lurgy hanging around.
But I think as well comes, a lot of people probably don't realise this, but I mean, lawyers, we are a really collegiate industry. Although it might look like when we act for a client that we are completely at war with the other side. Really, we are all in the same industry, and we do really respect those around us and our colleagues. And I think events like this really help maintain that.
Yes.
And I suppose their absence almost cements a kind of bit of a loghead.
Yeah.
You sort of forget that there are people on the other side.
But this is interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that was said by, we had a talker this morning, and one of the things he said is there's no benefit to aggression in law. How do you find that? Because we are in an adversarial environment. These people here at this conference could be on the other side of a matter
at any time. That's true.
This afternoon.
I mean, it was also said by a gentleman, a very esteemed barrister, who spoke about how to sort of speak in a mediation, how to be, I suppose, advocate for your client. And he spoke a lot about this, about that power-based advocacy or power-based negotiation doesn't work.
So what do you think our clients think of that? Because if we're going back to this question of, trust and stuff, don't our clients want us to be, in the vernacular, that bulldog, that something that, you sink your teeth into and it's got a locked jaw? I mean, this is what our clients want, isn't it?
It probably is, but it probably comes down to what we do as lawyers is to tell our client that that's actually not what they want. What they want is an outcome, and that's not a way in order to achieve that outcome.
This is the problem, isn't it? Because the more, I don't know what the barrister you were watching, because Chris and I have been in different streams, so we're watching slightly different things or sitting at slightly different parts of the conference, and I didn't see this one, but I can imagine that it goes deeper than just being overly aggressive. It's about how we treat each other, like literally, if you are that guy or that girl, and then you just sit next to somebody at a conference like this, then it's not going to take long for everyone to realise that you're that guy.
You're that guy. And well, someone spoke about it, and I can't remember which presenter, but he said he was in a position in the past where he could choose which lawyers in order to contract with and who they want to give work to. And he said the first thing they used to do was go onto their sort of Our People page of every firm. And I mean, every firm's got it.
Yes, and we have it.
We do it. We're both on there every time.
Schrodinger and Chewy are morale officers.
Yes, very, very valued employees.
Very valued employees.
But he will, as soon as he sees that guy, it's off. He actually said he didn't care how good an outcome this guy achieves. By principle, because he says it's not representative of what he expects out of lawyers.
I agree. I'd like to think that MJT has an excellent reputation in the market for not being that guy, for being collegiate, but getting also, and I think if you jump onto our reviews, you'll see that we get great outcomes for our clients.
It's not because we are
incredibly evil to the other side in some mystical way or some aggressive way. It's because the outcomes that my client wants, the only way you can get them is with finesse.
Our jobs as solicitors, I think, is to be the calming voice in the room, not to fuel the flames.
And you talk about this a lot, about entrenching views. If you are, if we take it out of an employment environment, put it into a family environment, if you're only going to be bloody-minded, the other side are just going to match that, surely.
Because they've got no choice.
There's nowhere to go.
There's actually got no.
Otherwise, you give in. There's a zero-sum game that happens.
You either win or you lose.
Yeah.
It's not about kind of coming to a.
Yeah.
And especially in circumstances where, as we know, almost all matters settle.
Yes.
So if you want to settle on a good outcome, the other side has to agree.
Yeah.
And if you've just, for lack of a better word, pissed them off the whole time, what are they going to think?
Yeah.
You know?
And you've also got this problem where it's not just entrenching views between client to client. If you isolate the solicitor and behave incredibly badly towards the solicitor's not going to look for ways to negotiate a better outcome for their client, because there's no way to, like you said, nowhere to turn. If you can't talk to the other solicitor, how do you get your client's point across in a way that makes sense?
You won't. It's
because you can't tell me that everybody who ends up in litigation wants to be there. They do it because they feel they've got no choice. And that's not, certainly, I'm not saying that's a favourite solicitor every time, but I can't help but think that those overly aggressive solicitors drive these matters to litigation instead of driving them to a better solution. It's a cheaper outcome and a safer and more comfortable outcome for the client.
Well, certainly the gentleman that presented today spoke about that in today's world, litigation is now the exception.
Yes. That's a good point.
It's no longer that, well, let's go to trial and then, oh, if we happen to settle, we settle. It's, let's look to settle, and if we can't settle, we've got nowhere else to go. We'll go to trial.
Yeah.
But that is very much the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
And does that go towards the trust level as well?
So when we talk about aggression in law, we're not just talking about we're not just talking about a solicitor. What about law school? You were closer to law school than I was. It was an aggressive environment, law school, when I was there. I assume it was still so.
It still is.
Those people are going to be those people who are at law school with might have information that you need at some point, and if you want to call them, you just isolate. How does it work these days? Because you're closer to this than I am.
I had a lot of reservations about some of the attitudes and behaviour of those students around me, and I'm obviously not going to name names because some of them are now lawyers, but
well, certainly would be. They will study law, I assume.
Well, we know the dropout rate. So, it was ironic considering the behaviour they were putting out. But the behaviours were, for example, belittling, berating, speaking above others in a way that is very, I'm better than you, rife. Like, it was
kind of arrogance.
Arrogance to the
which is amazing, because you guys, as law students,
actually know nothing. They don't know that. No one in the room knows that, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
So there's no kind of pushing them down.
Yeah.
And they just... It got to a situation where I didn't really engage with other students. I just didn't find any enjoyment from it. I was speaking about kind of the attitude of some law students and this idea of being aggressive. It's got to
start somewhere, right?
It starts at law school.
Right.
And maybe it's a situation where people, as they get through their studies and PLT and then early career further in, they calm down a bit because they're getting pushed out. You kind of realise that you're on the bee's knees. But certainly those type of characters everywhere in law school. People who will blatantly tell you what their GPA is, and God forbid if you have a lower GPA than you are lesser human beings to them.
Right.
Irrespective of the many factors we know which lead to one's GPA.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're not stupid because they got into law school.
Not to them though.
let's just start at that point.
And actually, when we first started in law school, there was one of the lecturers particularly spoke about the idea of, I believe it's the imposter syndrome. I mean, I apologize, I kind of got it wrong, but basically the idea that you're in a room full of law students. Everyone is equally as smart. We all got here, but for some unknown reason, you are lesser. You are less qualified to be in that room and to have a voice. And it's crippling. It's actually, and they say just about everyone in law will feel this at some stage, but it's actually really crippling. And these are the type of people though that perpetuate it. They instead of drawing up and assisting and getting someone's confidence to they're taking advantage of that in some way. But what's the advantage for this? It's just an ego boost.
Because I look at, because from where I sit, it's solicitors behaving badly, overly aggressive, challenging you, or even making you feel like that your knowledge of the law is less than theirs. And it is very difficult to be able to tell that. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, it's hard just by a phone call to be able to tell whether someone knows the law or doesn't know. So it's very difficult to be able to tell that anyway. But what's the point? I mean, what's the outcome for the client? You've got to go back to your duties, surely. It doesn't help the profession and your duty to the court and misleading the court. It doesn't help your primary duty to the client. It doesn't help your duty to the profession. So
what is it trying to do?
What is it trying to do?
It's absolutely coming from a self-esteem and self-confidence kind of area. We know the really experienced silks and barristers that you see who are almost top of our profession. They are the most down-to-earth, very kind of plain. You'll never see them challenge another person about a legal point kind of a rating way, because they don't need to.
No.
And it's because they have so much confidence in themselves and in their knowledge that they just don't actually need to, because they just don't need to. But I can remember a situation in law school. There was a tute, and there was one student who was renowned for being this type of person who kind of puts people down and what have you. And he was the same sort of person who constantly putting his hand up, not because he wants to contribute to the thing, it's just to show everyone else that he knows these particular points. And by the way, he doesn't tell you the points he doesn't know.
These are the people who think they're the smartest person in the room. That is and we've talked about that, thinking you're the smartest person in the room, inevitably, it's going to be a downfall. And
one of the most satisfying things I've seen was at this tutorial who, as we know, the tutor, he was a solicitor of some degree and sort of mid-30s, so let's just assume he's got at least 6 or 7 years, obviously probably closer to 10, challenges him. Because he's not done, this tutor has seen this for the last 10 weeks and challenges him and absolutely embarrasses the hell out of this kid. Because this kid doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
He actually doesn't. And as I said, he doesn't tell you about the times he doesn't know answers.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe more of that needs to happen. I don't know what happened to that guy, how he took that.
It's hard, isn't it? Sort of essentially, it's public humiliation for, hopefully, for a goal. Because again, was that the right thing to do? I don't know where the end is here, but
I'd like to think that either those type of people who unfortunately it wasn't one in every class. It was half the class might be like this.
Right.
It was very, very bad.
Yeah, so we're talking about law students who start off with a air of arrogance, feeling they're the most smartest person in the room, that sort of challenge. That sort of thing. To to becoming junior solicitors, where it's not necessarily, I don't know, taught out of them to just take a chill pill, maybe just ease it down, dude.
Just relax.
You've got some time to learn all this. Let's just call a spade and say that you need to learn this stuff, and chill it out a bit. To you know, a decade down the road where they haven't done those things, they're now senior solicitors, partners, special counsel, and they have essentially free rein to behave in this way because no one is now. There isn't anybody to say cut it out.
No, and you won't. I mean, unless.
So you're not going to get, unless you get a barrister telling them on the side, because they've got this.
But geez, but the barrister's probably unlikely to because he needs work from. He might need work from that.
It's interesting, isn't it?
There probably does come a point where someone is almost too far gone.
Yeah.
Where they're now too senior to be
reined in.
What happened to that tutor and that kid? There's no longer that ability.
No.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they become the rogues.
There is a scene, and we were talking about Harry Potter, I think, last time. We played a Harry Potter game recently, didn't we?
Oh, yes.
For those of you who don't know, every Wednesday, we used to do origami. Now we play.
I think we've mentioned it on the podcast. But yeah, we totally changed our Wednesday activity.
We now play board games. And one of the board games we played recently was a Harry Potter Triple Pursuit game.
Yep.
Anyway, so I remember in Harry Potter there is a scene where Dumbledore, and this is all books really. Where Dumbledore tells Voldemort or Tom Riddle, you know, gone is the time I can scare you into doing the right thing by, you know, setting fire to your wardrobe, and that sort of goes back to a scene that we learned a little while ago. And maybe that's true. Gone is the time, when you get to that point, gone is the time where there's someone to overlook, and you're now open to be moulded again. But how does this help the profession? Let's take it back to the basics. No benefit to aggression in law.
So how does it benefit the professional? Is it, or
Well, I guess the bottom line is we're saying that doesn't benefit our clients, right? Because it's not helping the collegiate behaviours that we need in order to get those great outcomes. It's not helping the profession because it's not teaching people like yourself or people who are people like Amelia, who's working as a PLT student in our office at the moment. It doesn't help people like her see what the right thing is. And therefore, you know, people like Amelia, people like you, people like me, it all just flows into something quite unfortunate.
But you do see, which I think is a really good thing, that senior lawyers who do have impressionable staff, whether they be PLTs, juniors or undergrads, with them. You see them do something that I think really good was where they have to have a particular difficult type of conversation with another lawyer. Quite often you'll find that that is done in is kept away from the impressionable kind of employees because they
know inherently it's wrong.
They know it's inherently wrong, but you know they have to be mindful of the law. Their duty to the profession and to the fact that there are impressionable people near them. And they're going to kind of learn. They're sponges. If they see it work, chances are they're going to do the same.
This is true. It's been a very heavy topic today.
It actually has.
It's been a very heavy topic. I want to change the topic slightly.
There you go.
And I want to talk about these board games that we've been playing.
Yes.
So for those of you who know, every Wednesday we stop and we do something a bit fun.
Something a bit fun, something that brings us together. It kind of breaks up the week a little bit. Something
that brings us together that we get to do. That's just a bit not law. We don't have to take each other seriously. We're not doing anything, and
actually, it actually helps with the ego because you realise you actually.
Oh my God! I'm going to totally lose this game, or my prowess in origami is not as good as I hoped it was going to be. You know? And we just have a laugh with each other, right? So we played Uno on Wednesday.
Oh yes.
And the Uno game that we played, I bought a bunch of my games in, and one of them was Uno. And Uno hadn't been opened, which means that I've never played before.
Which is going to be a shock to most people. It was certainly a shock to me that Melanie has never ever played.
I've never played Uno. I've played a lot of other games.
This might be not true, but it might be one of the most played card games in the world.
You might be right. I don't know. I didn't. But what I didn't realise is how divisive Uno is. So this is a thing. So what happened, people, is we started off reading the rules and going, okay, so what are the rules? But then there was stuff that you guys brought into it that weren't strictly in the rules. But they weren't out of the rules.
Well, because the rules don't speak about it.
The rules were silent on the stuff that we, like what was it called? Stacking?
Well, so here's my version of well, I'm going to say my version, but I actually mean the correct version of the rules.
The right version.
Yeah, the right way of playing the game. It is that you can stack +2s and +4s on each other. So the net result being that someone could potentially
get rid of 4 or 5 cards in one go.
Yeah, so you're going around and I've got a +2, I put it down. Instead of you picking up two,
I can put a +2 down.
And so
I like that.
Is that someone could potentially be picking up
15 cards, 16 cards.
Something like
that.
Anyway, I think that's allowed, but I also think you're not allowed to finish on what I call a special card.
Yeah, they called them power cards. Was it power cards?
There was also action cards.
Action cards? I don't know.
My point is that you're not allowed to finish on anything but a number.
Yeah, so these cards, guys, were, those who don't play Uno, like myself, they were things like pick up 2 cards, wild cards, skip a person card.
Reverse.
So cards that gave you a power to do something. Yeah.
Not allowed to finish them because it actually makes the game too easy. Because there's no incentive for you to use your special cards.
That's right.
Because it's easier to finish on them.
Especially if you end on a +4 wild card.
It actually doesn't matter what anyone, you've won.
Yeah.
You may as well just say it.
Yeah, I've got a +4 card.
Doesn't matter what you guys do, I've won.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, we had Amelia who won, I think, won the first round, but because she had a completely different set of rules.
She did have a completely, I'm just amazed by all these different iterations. I like this concept that Phoebe had, where she had 2 2s and she put both of them down at the same time. I actually thought that was going to be okay, but we were like, no, you can't do that. So
it's purely, by the way, based off internal kind of. There's no reason why any one set of the rules is better than another.
Well, I agree. I absolutely agree. But it's just, I found it fascinating because there's me, there was Phoebe, there was Amelia and yourself, and you guys all had different rules for this game.
And
it brought me to think about Monopoly. Monopoly has all these mad rules, I've played Monopoly before. I'm not, crazy, and. When you have to give a fine, for instance, we had that put into the middle, and when you landed on the free parking,
the corner one,
you would receive all the monies. And that's not a rule. And in fact, I think if you read the Monopoly game, it specifically says that you can't do that.
Hang on. This is all very big news to me. Hang on.
It's not part of the rules. A free parking is simply a free parking spot. Nothing happens to you.
So what happens to the money in the middle?
There isn't any. It goes to the bank. It's a fine. Consider it the Consolidated Revenue Fund.
That's not very fun, is it?
Well, I'm just saying.
Mr. Monopoly needs to rethink his rules.
I'm just saying.
But the interesting thing about it is, okay, if it's in the rules, then it's probably written like that. But people, universally do that.
They do.
They've taught
How
each
do
other
they get from country to country?
Word in the mouth, word of mouth. It's just this is the rule. You go on that and
you get all your money.
And I reckon it's because we love gambling. I mean, there's a certain gambling aspect to that.
And it's only one spot too.
It's one spot, and it might mean you kind of burst out of what would otherwise be a slow and decrepit way of
dying. Yeah, slow death.
I also know some of my family watched this podcast, and they would attest to the fact that there wasn't many finished games of
There was no winner.
Despite the fact that Australia and Brisbane is on its own tectonic plate, there was a lot of earthquakes happening.
Awful lot of.
For some reason, the table used to shake and all the pieces used to go around. So, I'll admit that some of them.
But it made me think about how many other games have odd rules. Like there must be a bunch of them for Scrabble, right? You know, I was thinking about, because the next game I'm thinking about choosing is Boggle. I don't know if you've ever heard of Boggle. Boggle is where you have this sort of box with the 9 holes in it where 9 die sit in. So you pick up the whole box with the 9 die and you shake it. And then you lift the lid of the box, and all the die are sitting in their little spots with all the letters in it.
Oh, and you have to make them.
You have to make words out of the letters. So I was thinking about this, and Phoebe's from Malaysia, you're Portuguese. I'm from New Zealand, and I'm not sure Amelia, but she made some reference to understanding French. And I'm just wondering, what foreign words could we use that we would all universally accept? And I'm wondering how, when we're thinking about these, this Uno, making up your own rules thing, this weird rule about the bank and free parking and Scrabble, and
completely news to me.
And Monopoly. How many Scrabble arguments there would be because the word exists but only in Gaelic, for instance? Well, I just wonder.
Well, I can tell you that.
Oh, hello, everyone. This is Benjamin. Benjamin is from a company called Lawganised.
Lawganised.
I love this name. I actually think the name is brilliant. How'd you come up with the name, Ben?
Well, I was at a conference in Sydney.
Yeah.
It was run by Tony Robbins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's called Unleash the Power Within.
Big Hands, Tony Robbins, that's from another TV show.
That's it. And I'd been thinking about this business for a while and what I could do with it. And I was just in the stands there at the Acer Arena in Sydney, and I went, Lawganised.
Right.
It's funny, so many clients and colleagues have asked me how I came up with the name, and they all think I paid this multi-million-dollar agency, and it's my little relatively, rudimentary brain that came up with it one day. Must be one of those clear thinking moments. So, hope you don't mind me barging in.
No, please.
Absolutely.
So Ben, we are, participants of this conference today. Ben is actually one of the stall holders.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about your business, just quickly.
Yeah.
So Lawganised is essentially a management consulting practice that provides practice management consulting, operations consulting to legal practices, primarily to the small to medium-sized firms.
Yeah.
Our focus, our vision is to change the lives of law firm principals, and that can be anything from some principals ask me to get them out of debt.
Yeah.
Some principals want me to recover millions of dollars worth of bad debtors, or in some practices I actually act as the virtual CEO or virtual GM.
Okay.
And in that role I effectively operate the practice on behalf of the principal.
Right.
From afar, but I attend quite regularly on site. I chair meetings, I provide reporting, I work with staff, I hold the staff accountable to their fees and budgets and those sort of things.
Oh, the fun meetings.
So you're not a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer?
I was once a principal of a practice, but I was a non-practicing equity director of a law firm.
So we were talking about no benefit to aggression in law.
Absolutely.
And you've probably got some views on this, seeing lawyers.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you've got something to do with sort of, because you were talking about PLTs when we spoke.
Yeah, so I've been doing a few lectures for the PLT students at QUT.
Yeah.
And among many things, in preparing themselves for their career as practicing solicitors, my message in that very context of the aggression piece is to say, look at the people around you in this room, your PLT cohort, your colleagues. I mean, they are your friends. They are your colleagues for life in your professional career. They're not a person you deem to be your enemy. They're not a person that deserves anything other than your kindness and respect. And they're not a person that deserves you to write antagonistic letters on the other side of a matter.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe
never see
that
those.
there is a fine balance between representing the best interests of your client.
Robust. What is it called?
Robustly.
And with respect, Melanie. I always say to clients, try and minimise the amount of times you use the phrase "with respect" to start your letter.
Yeah, because it really means with absolutely no respect at all. But what were you going to say?
Because everything after it's
no
respect.
I was being totally rhetorical there. My message really is that they need to be altruistic. They need to be kind in their approach, representing the best interests of their clients, but it doesn't mean take down another solicitor. This is because it actually helps the profession when we do this. It helps our clients' outcomes when we do this. Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about this earlier on, and we are solicitors, so it's very difficult to see it from the outsider's perspective. But I would say that at some point you weren't involved in law firms. Tell me a little about, because we talked a little bit earlier about these figures as well.
Yep.
Was there a time when you didn't know lawyers?
Well, look, my background is quite unusual. I started as an army officer, which is where the hairstyle comes from. It was 25 kilos ago. That's it. And then I had a business degree completed during my time in the army. My major was actually in human resource development, so it has the org psych side of it, building teams, leadership training, those sort of things. I went into an HR role with a large accounting firm, and that position evolved into a GM operational position.
So what was your view on lawyers, and did you find, were you untrusting, like public, -2 to 11, it's very untrusting. Did you have the same views on lawyers at that time?
I wouldn't say I had the same view personally. Working in the Big Four accounting world, we had a lot of colleagues in the legal industry and lots of good relationships, but obviously have some reciprocity with client referrals and those sort of things. But I must admit, at that point in my life, I didn't have, fortunately I guess, many needs to engage solicitors, other than obviously property transactions and conveyancing. But obviously since my career's gotten on and I've started businesses and worked in senior positions, I have had the time to engage a lawyer now and then, both in a personal and a professional capacity, and I've always been. So
you definitely hold this view from a use of a lawyer perspective, that because we talked about people wanting to have a bulldog solicitor and like this, but actually you've seen a lot of different angles on this one.
I have, yes, and even both prior to doing the Lawganised business and operating with some clients, look, there are some bulldogs out there, but equally some clients want their bulldog solicitor.
But are the outcomes better from your perspective? Because you've been around, you must have stepped your foot into a number of law firms.
I have. Look, I don't believe. It depends on the context. I don't believe that the outcome is better for the profession.
Right.
That bulldogs operate in the way they do.
Yeah.
Yes, for a particular client who might get a fantastic result, it's like the distribution of wealth. There isn't more money created. Generally, wealth transfers from one side to the other. In a litigation matter, generally one party loses, one party wins. But I do find that those solicitors, and we had a conversation about this earlier about the way that a solicitor will communicate with the other side. I do coach some up-and-coming partners of legal practices to be far more communicative, far more collaborative, and when they receive an antagonistic letter or email, my advice to them is to pick up the phone, because you actually put that antagonistic solicitor on the back foot by saying, hey, it's Chris here from MJT. I'm just going to have a quick conversation with you about your email.
It's a lot easier to do
it
on a letter than it is to do it
on
the phone.
we can all be warriors on...
Absolutely.
We're all keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warriors.
And I've written an article about this. The thing about writing any letter or any communication is the recipient is in total control of how that communication is received. You can't transfer tone, sarcasm, empathy. So on a phone call, you can say, hey Chris, this is Ben, appreciate your email just now. Can I just confirm with you what your point was in relation to X, Y and Z? And I've got a very calm, clear tone. I'm not saying, hey, look buddy, you're wrong, my client's right, you've got no position here, and you've got no right standing up to me because I'm a 5-year solicitor, you're a 1-year solicitor.
Yes, we've talked about that.
Yes, we have spoken about that.
Yes.
I don't think, I've got an opinion on that myself.
Yeah, so I think that more collaborative, more, as I said, open communication approach. And I do find that some of those activities that are occurring in the very antagonistic end of town tend to hide a few vulnerabilities.
That's what we were speaking about earlier today. There's mostly coming from a self-esteem kind of area, because your most senior lawyers, they're not like that.
No,
they're so comfortable with their own knowledge that they're quite openly pleasant.
Yes, absolutely.
This is true. Okay, so I'm interested because we were just talking, weren't we, about this kind of age gap and learning. But I think from a business owner perspective and a law practice business owner perspective, it's super important for me to teach how to advocate with respect.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, if I don't teach it, the person, I don't believe that the junior solicitor will understand it. Yes, and I'm also a great believer in do as I do, and and I'm not going to be.
You're not a really do as I.
Yeah, do as I say, because I'm going to do something completely different. And I want people to see that there is another way to operate in law without having to do that. And I think it's becoming. When I was learning, yes, there was lots of aggression, but there was more collegiate. I think we've lost the ability to be collegiate.
I think it's gone away.
I think it's going harder now to see the wood for the trees in that space. I'm not sure why. And you lecture to PLT students. So those of you who don't know out there, when a person chooses to go to law school, they go to law school. That could be 4 years or 5.5, depending on the choices they make. And then there's this additional postgrad that that all lawyers have to do here in Australia, which is called the PLTs, Practical Legal Training. And it's a postgrad diploma, and it lasts between 6 months and 1 year, depending on whether you do it part-time or full-time. But without doing those two, the degree first and then this diploma, you cannot go and then become a solicitor.
Correct.
So you're actually training the people at the very end of this process.
Yeah, and I believe that some of that behaviour we've been talking about is a little bit generational. And I do think that the change will probably be similar in a generational shift towards that far more collegiate approach. And I can't speak from the level of experience you bring, Melanie, where you've got so many more years, and you've probably seen a transition of the profession over a period of time. But I do agree with you. I think that there is a desire of the minority to not only manage the best outcomes for their clients, but in doing that, they try to do it in such a way that causes, let's just say, pain to the other solicitor.
Yeah, I think the workplaces are becoming better places for solicitors, but I'm not necessarily certain the work environment is becoming better.
You would have a kind of unique ability in your sort of role where if you're teaching PLT students, you're seeing what young people are like, but then you're also seeing older practitioners.
Yes.
That's right, you're that CEO guy. You're
yes.
the guy in there helping the practice.
Yeah, and we were speaking earlier about how law school and to some degree PLT as well is, I think it's far more prevalent, this type of bulldog behaviour. Do you see that kind of, what happens to these PLT students? Do they sort of calm down a little bit, or do they grow into the bulldogs that we know?
Look, that's an exceptional question. My response would be, I think they would be developed into, and it's the old adage of nature versus nurture. I think they're made, they're not born that way. And what I think is what I'm seeing at the moment, dare I say, the more senior practitioners imparting the mentoring they received onto their junior staff. Okay. Which is a style of leadership which I'd say today's contemporary professional doesn't align with.
I see what you're going with that.
And equally, if that is happening to such an extent that someone believes in order to succeed, they need to act in a particular way. So I think, Chris, again, good question, but they're made that way. They're mentored.
So the me's in the world need to do better.
Well, look, I think we've all got a collective responsibility to, I have a strong advocacy for servant leadership. My approach to leading people is to serve their needs, and that means to develop their skills, to assist them with their mentoring and understand their needs in all of those areas. I don't believe that a leader deserves to be served, and I think that there is a perception out there that a particular level of any business in many respects, and particularly some of the professions in accounting, legal, engineering, medical or whatever, that those senior professionals in those industries tend to think, bluntly, they are gods.
Yeah. I've got to this position, therefore I deserve this extra coolness or something.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, there's not many jobs in the office that I wouldn't do, or I certainly haven't done. I've done everything. But, you know, I pick up the stuff at in the photocopier machine. I make cups of coffee.
There's nothing worse than those people that are, oh, that's not my job.
Yeah.
And I often say to people, never tell me what your job isn't. I want to know what your job is.
Yeah.
And so you go back to your point there, Melanie. My comment there is no one's too good for anything.
No, absolutely
and
not.
I've seen the practitioners out there who will have a client meeting, they'll have coffees and cakes and teas, they'll walk out of the room and admin, clean up that room.
Yeah, okay.
And look, for me, I say pick up a broom and sweep. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, pick up a broom and sweep. You know, it's not particularly difficult.
No, no, and you know, see a gap. If you're the one that can fill it, then get on with it. If you've got something else to do, then you know.
But you mentioned before about, you know, the Melanies of this world need to do better. But it's actually everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, because you could be mentoring someone, and you're doing a fantastic job. I mean, you tell them all the right things, you're showing them the right things. They have a matter and they go to court. They come across me, for, you know, just me as an example, although I'm not this type of person, but they come across another lawyer.
And you're that guy.
And I'm that guy, and it works. It works on this particular matter.
I see. And you, so all of a sudden you are the new mentor.
I am the mentor in that situation.
Yeah, okay.
Even though it's for the better, like, it's for the worse or for the profession.
Yeah.
That's why I said it's up to the entire kind of everyone, because it's not right for me to do that.
Because we still need to get good outcomes for our clients. I honestly believe that we can do that in a way that's collegiate.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I've got a different question for you. Just as you came in, we were talking about Uno.
Yeah.
The game.
Yeah, Uno the game. Have you played Uno before?
I play Uno, and I even have a trophy in my family called Uno Champion.
Okay, so we on Wednesdays we all play. The office plays a board game, and Uno was brand new to me. I'd never played it before.
Which is shocking.
Which is shocking, apparently. And Phoebe, Amelia, and Chris all had different rules for Uno.
Right.
So, are you what do they call stacker? Is that what it's called?
As far as you know, what's the rules you play?
Let's give an open question here. Have you got some unusual rules?
So I think the stacker rule is if you haven't got a card to play, you pick up off the deck.
Yeah.
Are you saying a stacker is you continue to draw off the deck until you can play a card?
Oh, we hadn't even touched on that.
No. Stacking for me is when I have like 3 twos and I put them all down at the same time.
No, I don't play that style.
Ooh.
It's 1 card per round.
Okay, so what about your stacking?
So I've got a +2, I drop a +2, Melanie drops a +2. You have to drop
I
4.
play that rule, so then
do?
the next person is draw 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so forth. And what about finishing?
So finishing is 1 card that is legal at the time.
So what's a legal card to you? This was a big question.
A legal card being same number, same colour, or a special card.
Oh, okay. Because
I play that. You're not allowed to finish on the special card
Okay,
because
right.
I sort of think that it's just too easy.
So my youngest daughter, who is a Uno champion, the family champion, she has an uncanny ability with. She should do our lottery tickets, frankly, to have 2 draw 4s in her hand at the last couple of rounds, and she always finishes with a draw 4.
Right.
And then she wins the game.
And it's perfectly acceptable.
But my family.
What about a wild card? Can you end on a wild card?
Any card that's legal.
So what's a non-legal card?
So I mean, if you've got a red card.
I see.
In front of you,
You can't just.
you've got a green and a different number, you can't play that.
I
card.
see.
That's
Sorry,
a
I think I think I asked that question twice now.
My family is brutal on the calling of Uno with 1 card left.
So you have to boom, Uno straight away.
If you put your card down and I put my card down, and if you don't say Uno by the time I drop my card, you draw 4.
Right.
Do you have that rule?
Yeah, no, I play that rule.
I don't know if that rule's in the game though.
I'm not sure any of these rules are in any of the.
It's like pool. Every pub's got its own rules. Foul on the black. Some pubs there's no foul on black. Some pubs are. If you foul on black, you lose.
So we were talking about Monopoly.
Okay.
And there's this universal rule that actually is expressly prohibited in rules.
In the actual rules.
In the actual rules, which is putting money in the middle.
Yep.
That you collect on free parking.
Correct.
Yes.
We play that role.
You play that role?
Yeah. I didn't know it was specifically...
That's exactly what I said. I was shocked. I thought, no one questions it. I've never heard anyone object to that.
See, I never get it either.
Your luck is not there.
I never get free
the champion.
My daughter gets it all the time. She's always... And like, if someone's got a hotel on Mayfair, I'm the poor customer. I'm paying 3/4 of my money to pay rent to my 13-year-old daughter, who just happens to pull Mayfair out of her.
And there's no payment plan. It's
no payment plan. I'm mortgaging properties, or I'm out of the game.
I'm actually a really big fan of the train stations.
Yeah, actually, my son's a train station purchaser.
Yes. And I like the waterworks ones too. So
the utilities.
The utilities.
I have a view that it doesn't pay off.
Right, I'm just saying.
I've absolutely no.
I'm with you, Chris. I'm a property magnate, but I only get Old Kent Road and.
I once saw on Facebook that apparently a statistician has done Monopoly.
Right.
And your pink and orange, which are if you're at the start, not the first row,
Pall Mall, those
it's
ones.
between going to jail and
Pall
free parking.
Mall,
they
Bow
are your
Street.
best ones.
Yeah.
No, Bow Street's green, isn't it?
The ratio between the earnings that how much you pay
to your
and how much your earnings, because the likelihood of landing on those is actually, because they're not all the same. Not all the sides are the same.
But it's a die.
No, but not all the sides are the same. So your probability of landing.
Right. I thought they were exactly the same numbers on each of the sides.
No, and the yield out of those properties is greater.
It's probably the different ratios of rent and rentals for properties on them and the like. We are a big board gaming family. My wife is actually almost a semi-professional board gamer.
Wow.
And actually runs a board gaming group.
Where is Lawganised situated?
Lawganised has our main office in Eagle Street in Brisbane.
Right. Well, you should come up one day when we're playing our Wednesday game.
We've got a fellow board game with you.
Okay,
Yes.
no, my wife owns probably 130 board games.
Well, perhaps you should bring your own one day.
I know about 4 of them. But
it has to be a game that's capable of being played within an hour.
Correct, and
Yes.
I agree.
So
And
that's the rule at work base. Well, it's an unsaid rule that we need to
play. We can't play Risk for 2 days.
Yeah.
Our billables would be terrible.
it probably doesn't align to some Lawganised strategies for legal practices, other than the morale piece.
No, but you're welcome to come and play a board
I'd
game
be
with
delighted
us.
to play a board game.
I think we'd love to have you.
I should. My wife might be able to come along and be the referee and
Well,
teach
she
a few
is
people.
welcome to play as well. We found out
Maybe
that
that's what we need. We need a referee.
Well,
Maybe.
I'm a strong advocate of having table tennis and arcade games inside the law firms.
Something a little bit different. Something
Goes back to that piece before.
we
about
have
morale.
those little video games that we never get around to playing. Remember how bad we were at Donkey Kong?
Yeah, I didn't realise just how hard Donkey Kong is. But do you find value in those sort of setups in law firms?
Look, I do. I think at the risk of getting into the that level of Google and everywhere you go there's a beanbag and the slides and stuff. Although I think Flight Centre's got a slide in South Brisbane now. But look, I think that those areas that you can go into a quiet room or an ante-room, call it what you will, pick up a table tennis bat over lunch and have a little hit with your colleagues or play an arcade game. I mean, a former firm I used to work for, we had arcade, we had pool, we had table tennis, we had a Friday drinks session between 4 and 5 every Friday that was semi-compulsory. Not to be forced socialising, but it was a break. It was just encouraged to really just drop down the tools and work, put the work aside and have a sort of an afternoon drink.
Okay.
So look, I think there's some value in some of those social activities in the office.
Well, Ben, you're welcome to play board games on a Wednesday afternoon with us. I think you've got our phone number. You can certainly
appreciate the invitation.
Next time you've got a free Wednesday afternoon, just contact our team. We'll let you know what time we're playing.
Indeed.
That's
Love
brilliant.
to.
Well, Ben, thank you very much for sitting in with us today.
I appreciate you letting me photobomb the podcast.
And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
I did love the conversation and would love to talk more about it. I love that space.
Yeah, it's brilliant. What we'll do for those who are interested, we'll put some more information on you on our
Wonderful, thank you.
on our
Lawcast.
YouTube. This is Lawcast, but on our YouTube thing on the Lawcast.
Yes, as you can see, although we are the stars of the podcast, We have actually nothing to do with the editing, the publishing, any of that, because we're also terrible at that.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, well, as I like to say to lawyers, let me take care of some of that stuff.
Yes.
You guys practice law.
We are very
It's
good
not
lawyers.
in our wheelhouse whatsoever. So.
Perhaps not good editors, but yes, we'll make sure that any of our viewers who are interested in what you do will get an opportunity to have a look at that.
That'd be very kind, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ben, for coming in. I think the
Absolutely.
next session is on sexual harassment.
Yes.
Yeah, important session. So yeah,
I will
looking
let
to
you
get in
guys
there.
go, and I'll pack up for you both.
Right,
Sexual
perfect.
harassment, for those of you who know, is an MJT law thing. We do a lot of that here at MJT Law, but it's a hot topic at the moment.
Absolutely.
So I'll let you both think.
Get to it.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Brilliant.